All right, welcome back to the 49th episode of the podcast that we call The Unknown. I am Michael Volpe. I report from Chicago, Illinois. That is in Cook County, Illinois, and I write at michaelvolpe.substack.com. And my broadcast partner is Richard Lukeman. He's somewhere around Fort Myers, Florida, in Lee County, Florida.
Allegedly.
Named
Allegedly.
after Robert Edward Lee. And you write at lukeman.substack.com, which is luthmann.substack.com. We got a ton of stuff to talk about in the current events segment. This might be the last broadcast before you go to the Slammer, but we're going to get to that in a minute. Last week, I think we forgot to talk about it, but the Republicans are hopping mad and saying that Obama committed treason, a coup. I don't know. We'll start with what Tulsi Gabbard found, and we'll go from there. New evidence has emerged of the most egregious weaponization and politicization and intelligence in American history. Per President Trump's directive, I have declassified an oversight majority staff report that exposes how the Obama administration manufactured the January 2017 intelligence community assessment that they knew was false, promoting that lie that Vladimir Putin and the Russian government helped President Trump win the 2016 election. In doing so, they conspired to subvert the will of the people, working with their partners in the media to promote the lie in order to undermine the legitimacy of President Trump, essentially enacting a years-long coup. Essentially, she says. And so now some people, not everyone, wants President Trump tried for treason, like Cathard. Cathard thinks anyone who looks at Trump.
President Obama, you mean, not President Trump.
President Obama, right. Cathard thinks that President Obama should be tried for treason.
Cathard is a very, very bright and good individual. Cathard is
he thinks anyone who looks at Trump the wrong way should be tried for treason. All right. So anyway, go ahead. You explain it, and I'm going to get up. This is like the document that she was referring to. It's 46 pages.
I'm going to even go very more simply than that. I'm going to ask you some questions.
Okay.
First question. Where were you born, Michael?
I was born in Moscow in the Soviet Union.
The Soviet Union. And when you were born there, was that place called the Evil Empire?
Well, by President Reagan. Not
and would you agree with his characterization that it was the Evil Empire?
Well, obviously, we moved from there, yes.
Okay, and so you're a Jewish person, correct?
Right. Well, one of the reasons we moved.
And you were persecuted. You were persecuted in the Evil Empire because of your religious faith. Well, Jews were persecuted. Jews were persecuted in the Soviet Union because of their religion.
Specifically, my grandfather on my father's side, who spent approximately a decade in a gulag because he ran a very successful corner store and was Jewish. Specifically, my grandfather, yes.
And so you come to the United States. Now, the man who runs Russia now is a former KGB operator of that evil empire. Is that right?
Right.
So if you're going to connect somebody in the United States government to the most evil of empires and the people controlling that evil empire, you better be damn straight about your story. Is that correct? You better be damn straight about your intelligence.
Right.
And if you're using that information as someone that's in the government of the United States, that the people elect that have taken an oath of trust, and you use that information to try for political purposes to sway elections and to conduct a coup d'etat against the United States.
All right, so we had a little bit of technical difficulty, but you were in the middle of a rant about how it's so terrible to suggest falsely.
I'm making allegations of censorship.
Right.
Cut the camera. Cut the mic.
Right. You were saying it's just horrible and awful to make an accusation.
No, I'm saying it's treasonous, Michael. Very different.
It's not treasonous. When liberals say that J6 was a coup or an insurgency or whatever they come up with, they're ridiculous. And then
it's a bunch of people getting together for coffee compared to the evil empire, Michael.
Putting out false information is not actually illegal unless you're under oath. So
and unless you're using it to affect regime change in the United States, that's called
right. What do you really?
Yeah.
Then Richard Nixon committed treason too. Then you should look up the Muskie letter. He made sure that the candidate.
Big difference. It didn't come officially from the intelligence source at that point. Okay.
Right. No.
The Hatch Act, right? And politics are different than
Nixon came up with a bogus letter that made it seem like Ed Muskie was anti-Canadian. All right, give me a flipping break. That's not treason either. He got rid of the one opponent that could beat him in 1972. And that's not treason either. It's a dirty trick. And by the way, he was impeached for, among other things, but it's not treason.
But Nixon never colluded with the Russians. Nixon never insinuated that his people colluded with the Soviets. Never did any of this.
He insinuated falsely that one of his political opponents was anti-Canadian, causing the guy to drop out of the race.
He colluded with the Canadians. Holy shit.
No, he didn't collude with the Canadians. They came up with a false letter.
Some ice hockey going on. Come on.
Right. They came up with a false letter. There's no difference. And also, this whole thing is based on like nonsense. Long ago, people said he wasn't trying to get inside the voting machines. What's that one woman's name?
He said he colluded with Tim Horton.
Right.
Okay? Barack Obama said Donald Trump colluded with Vladimir Putin, the KGB operator. Right. I think there's a big difference there. One guy makes coffee, another guy makes corpses. And we've been talking on this show about how he's making corpses in the Ukraine. Okay, so when you say he's a mass murderer in your book, Mike. So
right, he is. That doesn't. Right, that doesn't mean that any of this is treason.
The only thing they didn't do was
Obama is one of the worst presidents. This taints his legacy even more. That I agree with. It's complete and utter garbage to say.
I'm going to tell you two rules of American culture and American law. The rule of American culture is in action movies, the black guy always dies first. The rule of American law is in a conspiracy, the black guy always goes to jail first. If I was Barack Obama, I would lawyer up very quickly.
Right. He's not going to jail.
Say that now.
You want to rip the country apart. You charge that guy with treason. You got Trump is doing exactly what I was afraid.
I bet you Trump gets him charged. I bet the DOJ charges him and Trump pardons him for the sake of the country.
Yeah.
No, and then he wins the midterms. And then he goes on to Mount Rushmore.
Right, and he's not going on to Mount Rushmore either. And if he charged him just to pardon him, that would look almost as bad.
The DOJ
right, almost as bad. He's doing exactly what I feared, which is going after his enemies through the legal system, suing everyone he doesn't like civilly, and then threatening charges for everyone. Threatens Elon with deporting him. It's completely really bad stuff. This is third world type behavior. All right. So on a more positive note, Trump with another trade deal. I'm pushing my grade on trade to a B+. He's got trade deals with every important country except for China. Once he gets there, he's at an A+. They keep some tariffs in place. They're not as significant. 15% isn't 25 or 30 like he was threatening. And I think the Europeans committed to 750 billion. I don't know over the time period. That's an important part. In natural gas, I think imports, some sort of energy import. We got a lot of natural gas because we frack. And that's a big deal for a lot of reasons, because the Europeans, that is, are now less dependent on Russian natural gas. So I think he is playing a little bit, maybe like 20D chess here. That's a way to pressure Putin. I presume Putin's thought has had like a counter for this, because he had to expect something like this to happen. So we'll see how much it affects Putin. He also pulled up the timeline. He gave him 50 days. Now he wants a week, Trump that is, to make a peace deal. But this is pretty significant. It didn't look like they were going to make a deal with the Europeans. Your thoughts?
Well, I will tell you what the grade is. Not a revised grade. It's been the same grade from the very beginning. A+. Donald Trump gets an A+ in everything that he's done with the trade policy, with the economics. He understood everything, and he got all these conehead, pinhead, idiotic, economists from the University of Chicago and Stanford and Berkeley and Columbia University and Harvard University that's saying that the tariffs would have been the end of the world. It hasn't happened. It's only helped. And the fact is that America is now respected again. These deals are great deals. Okay, you look at what's going on. The EU deal is a brilliant deal. Okay, it's a brilliant deal. And you know what? The pressure is on China. China will, mark my words, be making a deal, I believe, within the next quarter, because I don't think they can economically sustain. Their people are probably in the streets already eating the dogs and the cats. You know, that's what happens when you have a country that is becoming a third world country. China, when you go inside the borders, there's crazy stuff that goes on there. And so they're not going to be able to economically sustain unless they make a deal with us. Trump is bringing everybody to the table, ushering in a new economic prosperity, the new American golden age, a time of peace. Okay, this man is you know, and you're not going to tell me that God did not send Donald Trump to save America. You cannot do it. You can
God
kill
must
me
think,
before I would say
God
that.
must think Trump is expensive because we got a $37 trillion debt, and he thinks it should go higher. He's not that much of a genius, because what Canada and Mexico are going to do is they're going to bypass the U.S. on trade. And they're going to create a corridor and trade amongst themselves and bypass the U.S. The other thing is, with massive tariffs on China and tiny tariffs on the EU, what the auto manufacturers may do is produce in Europe, because they got to get Chinese steel and Chinese auto parts, and that would actually be cheaper than producing in the U.S. So we'll see if he outsmarted himself. I read a tweet that didn't make sense. And then you got this. He's not a complete genius, but I give him a B+.
Wait 1 second. This is the greatest red herring I think that we've ever had, Mexico-China. Because all Donald Trump has to do is say that any commercial air freighter that passes over U.S. airspace is in a situation where it has to pay the tariffs. So you can
get around.
No, okay, fine. Michael, you understand what you're saying? You're saying that all the stuff in Canada has to come in through British Columbia and come in through the St. Lawrence.
They'll find a way. Okay. That's not that hard.
You know the cost of things are going to be at that point?
Yeah, they're not a lot less than the tariffs.
Cost prohibitive. Cost prohibitive. It's going to be cheaper to pay the tariff. Trump knows that. Trump is smart enough to know that, and he's going to do a tariff on air cargo. Mark my words. Tariff on air cargo.
Right. We'll see. What he'll wind up doing is hurting the two biggest trading partners and putting them together. And so we'll see if it works out as well as you claim it is. The next thing is, you're still not in jail, but we're going to see for a week or so. I don't know how long this has actually been going on, but for a week or so, you have been made aware that the government in Staten Island, New York, which I got it wrong originally, I want to get it right this time, Richmond County, through this guy, Michael McMahon. This guy, Michael McMahon, is the district attorney of Richmond County. However, with regards to your deal, he's not the DA. He's just a citizen who came to the New York Police Department as a victim of a heinous crime. From my cousin Vinny, and that heinous crime was receiving, that is pretty heinous, by the way, receiving one of your emails from your Substack, that he signed up for, according to the screenshot you provided of the back end of your Substack. Worse than that, this email was dated July 13th, and all you did was cross-post with a quick commentary on top of an article from Dr. Bandy Lee. The article didn't mention McMahon. It had nothing to do with McMahon. And yet he went to the NYPD, as you can see here, and complained about you. And he may or may not have everything he needs to get you arrested, but he definitely did not suspect that, I believe, all the media attention. Now, before we go on, that he may have committed perjury, because in his complaint, he says he doesn't know you. But if he doesn't know you, how does he have a protective order against you?
Yeah, he's claimed that I was the perpetrator of a previous crime against him, and that there's no order of protection that is stemming from that case, one that I was never served on.
Right. And the so-called crime was making a satirical Facebook page which made fun of him. And he was at the time.
The very important fact here is that the email was sent by Substack, not by Richard Luthman, but from the Substack team, and I have no control. But the other part is he said he was fearful for bodily injury or death from that Substack.
Based on that Substack email.
That's what makes
now,
it a felony.
You've got a long history with him, but part of that history involved him and his wife, Judy. Is that her name?
Judith McMahon.
And she was what? She's a Supreme Court judge, and you actually got her demoted, right? How did you get her demoted?
Well, what happened was back in 2015, McMahon ran for DA. So he was a political hack before that. And so he was a city councilman. Then he became a congressman. He was a Nancy Pelosi lieutenant in Congress. He was only there for 2 years. He got knocked out at the Tea Party surge. And then he went to work for the Islamic Republic of Turkey and others as a lobbyist, okay, for a lobbying firm. So then he says, "Oh, look, there's an open seat now in the district attorney's office." There's him and Pelosi. There's an open seat in the district attorney's office, and so I'm going to go and run for district attorney because of his name recognition. He was a shoo-in in the seat. I opposed this man in 2015, saying he's got no prosecutorial experience whatsoever. What's he do belonging in? It was justice. He's not a criminal defense attorney. He wasn't a district attorney before that. He has no business being the DA. He's just going to be a hack in that seat. And it's proved to be correct because in the 10 years, they still have a paper filing system in Staten Island. You cannot go and look up cases like you could in federal court or in most other courts like in Brooklyn, New York, or in Manhattan, anywhere else around the country. He's a hack. Okay, that's number one. Number two, in 2017, the chief clerk of the court came to me, and that was Judy McMahon's number two, the chief clerk, the guy who kind of ran the courthouse for her. And he had been recording the people in the courthouse, McMahon especially, because once McMahon became the district attorney, there was a conflict of interest because Judy McMahon was the chief judge of Staten Island, the administrative judge, the assignment judge. So what does that mean? Mike McMahon dreams up who's going to be charged, and in the same bedroom during pillow talk, they decide who the judge is going to be, what the sentence is going to be, how the justice is going to be meted out. You cannot do that. It's such a conflict of interest. So the Office of Court Administration turns around and says, okay, Judy, you're the civil judge for all the civil matters. And then Steve Rooney, you're the judge for all the criminal matters. Judy, stay in your lane. Don't go in your lane, out of your lane and do criminal stuff because that's a huge conflict. Well, what did she do? The first thing she did, they developed a part called Part N, the narcotics part. And Judy was handpicked Judge Charlie Troya to go into that part. That part was running for a couple of years. And what they did was they shuffled warrants away from who they called so-called defense-oriented judges. That's what the McMahons called them. In reality, they're judges that like the Constitution, that respect the Constitution, that have read the Bill of Rights. They instead send it to Troya. And here's the scam, Mike. Mike Volpe gets picked up. Mike Volpe did a string of 5 armed robberies on Staten Island. They pick Mike Volpe up. In his car, he's got a marijuana joint in his ashtray, right? That goes to the Part N narcotics part. Doesn't go to a regular judge on the string of armed robberies. It goes to their handpicked judge, Charlie Troya, who rubber stamps the string of robberies. That may have been fruit of the poisonous tree. Mario Mattei was one of the judges. Wayne Ozzie was one of the judges. Mattei was the bureau chief for the DA's office for 20 years under Bill Murphy, probably one of the best DAs that we've ever had in New York history, not just Staten Island history. And what happens is Mattei would send these people back and say, get me more. You're telling me there's a whole string of armed robberies here. I don't see it. Get me more so I have probable cause. Charlie Troya rubber stamped it. Charlie Troya's on tape saying, why am I getting all these warrants? What the hell's going on? Why am I getting all these warrants? Because he's rubber stamping it. And so that was the scam. They were violating the rights of dozens, if not hundreds, of criminal defendants, white, black, and brown, on Staten Island who have served time in jail because of bogus warrants, more time than they should have because of bogus warrants, civil rights violations. This is a RICO case, according to Frank Parlato. Frank Parlato is investigating this RICO case right now, and he's going to be coming out with some big stuff about the RICO.
Right, so there's another part to this story that's more like not relevant, but more towards the present, and that is this judge, Ray Rodriguez, and this case that you had with McMahon that was supposed to be over.
This is the craziest part. Click on the part right there where it says FCI 90073. Down under the picture of Rodriguez, this is FCI. Click on that. Okay? What comes up? This is the appearance.
Right, so in 2021, everything should have ended. No violation found. Violation of probation, no violation.
I wasn't in court for that. They didn't notice me on that. I didn't go to court on that. I wasn't in court for
that. And then all of a sudden, more than 4 years later, Judge Rodriguez is holding court adjourn. Post dispositional. You've been a lawyer. What does post dispositional mean?
The case is over. There was a disposition in the case.
Post dispositional. Are they making up
They're making shit. They're making shit up, and I'll tell you why. What happened? Okay, they discovered that. Oh, wait, go ahead, Mike. You go. You want to set it up?
I think that you expect on August 1st for them to issue a bogus arrest warrant, right? Because you got the next hearing on August 1st.
They might do something. Who knows what they're going to do? But what they did was, this is called an SCI, a supplemental criminal information. They tried to piggyback another charge on the one that I was indicted for. I showed up in the Staten Island court, I think, once when I was indicted, and they booked me correctly for the fake Facebook case. They booked me for the charges, and they gave me fingerprints, and they ran me through the system. The SCI, the supplemental criminal information, they did not book me, and they did not arraign me correctly. So what happens is, when you don't get booked and processed by the NYPD, you don't get arraigned correctly based on that, then that charge is bogus. The SCI is bogus, okay? And that's the paperwork I put in. I put in a motion, 27 pages with some exhibits showing that it's bogus. The plea deal that I took is also bogus, because if you have to take a plea in the United States of America, it has to be knowing, voluntary, and intelligent. You can't voluntarily, knowingly, and intelligently plead to something that's not a crime. They had me plead to something that was not properly and procedurally criminal jeopardy against me as part of the global deal that they put in front of me. So the whole thing, the baby goes out with the bathwater. I just discovered this a few days ago by the fact that they did this post-dispositional hearings on this. That's what they're trying to fix. They're trying to under the radar. Did not notice me. They didn't tell me that these cases were going on. They didn't send me a notice saying, Mr. Lupa, we're doing something in your case. Please come here for due process purposes and see what's happening, or send a lawyer, or waive your appearance. Did not do that. They opened the door, and now I'm going to go storming through it, and I'm going to get this whole thing thrown out.
Right, but will you be able to do that before you're picked up, or will they still be able to pick you up before all of this unravels?
They still can try to pick me up. They could still, and I have the tape of the NYPD detective John Wilkinson from the Warren Squad in the 120 precinct of the NYPD, who says, "Oh, because of who the victim is, we'll get whatever we want here. Any judge will sign this, and we'll send the U.S. Marshals down to go get Luthman." That's what he said. We have it on tape. And so the fact of the matter is, they might go do that. If they do that, I might have to spend 2, 3, 4 months in jail. But if I come out of this on the other side, I'm going to be a multimillionaire, and these people will probably be in jail. I've already talked to Ed Martin's office, the U.S. pardon attorney. I've been sending him everything. He's the weaponization group, the weaponization working group for the DOJ. He's the chair of that. Okay, he's keenly interested in weaponization type cases and stories. This is textbook. This case has been weaponization from day one. The 2015 stuff was political payback. The 2017 indictment in the feds was political payback by McMahon engineered. 2018 in New York State was engineered by McMahon. It was weaponization. It was a dress rehearsal for Donald Trump in New York City. And Mike McMahon is low-hanging fruit for the Trump DOJ right now and weaponization. They can't get Alvin Bragg, and they can't get Tish James, not yet. They may get them very soon. But if they can take out Mike McMahon, then the rats will be running from the sinking ship. They'll be running, and then the FBI, Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, and all the New York people in weaponization will have rats coming to them, flipping. Not only on McMahon, but on Alvin Bragg and on Tish James. This is his way to get rid of the loose.
Listen, if they're coming to Kash Patel and Dan Bongino, nothing's going to happen. Those are the two biggest incompetents that we got in our government. All right, so we had all kinds of celebrity deaths over the week. We're going to start with the one closest to me. This is my first sports hero, Ryan Sandberg. Preceded Michael Jordan by a few months, his 84 season. He was in mid-season form by the time MJ, no, he was done probably by the time MJ came along. He died this week. This month we've had Malcolm Jamal Warner, Michael Madsen, who's the guy from Blacks? Oh my God, the guy from Ozzy Osbourne. You had the really old
Hogan,
Hulk Hogan, and the really old jazz player. Your thoughts on any of them?
Chuck Mangione. We had a whole bunch.
He was really old, and that's what old people do. They die. So Sandberg was only 65. Mangione was 84.
Rhino, I felt bad about Rhino because he had a battle.
Everyone felt bad about Rhino.
We thought that he was in remission and he was doing a lot better. And then we found out beginning of the year it was back. And this is, it's just
And
sad.
that happens a lot with cancer. My dad survived cancer 5 times before he passed away in his 80s, but the first time he got it was 59. Um, but people felt bad about Sandberg because he has universal respect and he earned it based on the way he
He's
played
likable. I don't
and
think
the way he
anybody
carried
feel
himself.
bad about him. You can hate
Right.
the Cubs. You got to love Ryan
Right.
Sandberg.
No,
There are people in St. Louis that like Ryan Sandberg.
Right.
That's how.
Right. No, and he earned that. He played the game the right way. He didn't cheat. He spoke out against cheating. He really disliked cheating. The one knock on his game was he rarely dove. As Joe Morgan said, his uniform is clean. He had great range, but he never dove, so the range somewhat limited. And he didn't have a great arm. So he wasn't quite 5'2", but no, he was a great
He's a
player.
second base. You don't need a great arm at second.
Great second. Yeah, he didn't need to have it, but he started actually at third base. It was still without a great arm. But no, he was one of the best defensive second basemen ever, one of the best offensive second basemen ever. Unfortunately, they got to the playoffs a couple of times, and he did great in the playoffs, but they never won a World Series with him. But Hogan, obviously, I watched him when I was a kid. You know what I find interesting about Madsen is that guy's had a very long career, but in almost every tribute, the only thing they talk about, they don't even just talk about Reservoir Dogs. They just talk about the one scene where he cuts the guy's ear off. He was in a lot of stuff. I loved Donnie Brasco. He wasn't necessarily my favorite character, but I liked him playing Sonny Black. That's based on a real character. He had a long career, but the only thing it seems like he's remembered for, not even Reservoir Dogs, but cutting off the guy's ear. And he did a lot of interviews about that. He was late 60s as well. Virginia Madsen's brother, she, I believe, was in Raging Bull as Jake LaMotta's girlfriend, wife. But anybody else you want to talk about?
Well, Hogan got to me because Hogan was MAGA before Trump was MAGA. And he was one of the big reasons I think that flipped the election for Trump. When Hogan came on stage, he really reinvigorated, charged MAGA, and remembered us back to the days in the 80s when America was respected and America was feared. And so we really lost a great American that day, because when you looked at what the Russians thought of America in the 80s, that had to have been Hulk Hogan. You got this big guy that's ready to come kick everybody's ass. And so that's what it is.
Yeah, he got really big. He used steroids, but did get really big.
Well, that's
like to cheat on his wife. There were negatives about Hogan. He's remembered with rose-colored glasses. But be that as it may,
Washington, those Thomas Jefferson.
Listen, as ridiculous as that is, now you want to put Trump on Rushmore. I think we settled that Rushmore is 4 presidents. Why should Trump be number 5? Or do you want to take somebody off?
No, we add him right there. See where that spot is over there? We can add him. The engineers already said there's a plan to add him right next to Lincoln. We can put Trump right there. I think he belongs there. I think that building on what he did his last time, I think that he's probably one of the most pivotal and greatest presidents that we've ever had. Now, you talk about rose-colored glasses. You look at 2 of those presidents, George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. They were great men, but they went out to the slave houses and they were, bumping uglies.
They owned slaves.
And so they were bumping uglies. George Washington died of syphilis and he didn't get it from Martha. So the thing is, all these people are flawed people because they're men. They're not God. They're human beings. But, if you're going to say anybody's closest to the angels, it has to be Abraham Lincoln. Abraham Lincoln was the man who freed the slaves. Abraham Lincoln stopped the Great Civil War. And Abraham Lincoln was assassinated because he was the president of the United States. Right. But also we have 2 others that were anointed by lead. And Teddy Roosevelt survived an assassination, and so did Donald Trump.
But Roosevelt did a speech with the lead in his side. Trump went to the hospital.
Trump was almost killed. If he didn't turn his head.
Yeah, well, Teddy Roosevelt took a bullet and made a speech before he went to the hospital. You're not going to look. Washington. You're right that they owned slaves, and owning slaves was counter to everything that Jefferson stood for, which is liberty and freedom. for everyone except black people, apparently. And Jefferson's my favorite American, one of my favorite presidents, because as Bill, I'm going to forget he was the governor. Bill Richardson once said, the greatest land deal in human history, the Louisiana Purchase, a brilliant deal that expanded the U.S. at the right time. And he wrote the Declaration of Independence. He was the ambassador to France when the Constitution was being written. So he had somewhat little to do with like the finer points of the Constitution. But as far as the principles, one of the keys, obviously Washington, the general for the Revolutionary War, they put Teddy Roosevelt partially because it was built shortly after he was done being president. But he is a very significant president.
He ushered in a new era of conservation. The national park system are there before him. He busted the trust.
And he busted the trust.
And Trump is ushering in a new American golden age where we're respecting
right.
around.
And on that note, they had 3% growth for the first time in any quarter under President Trump. They have 3% growth. That's not bad. However, Bill Clinton averaged 3.8%. Ronald Reagan averaged 3.4%. So when you just get one at 3%, that's not very much. Reagan once had 10%.
I'm coming, baby. That's what Trump has got to say.
They might be. They might be. But when you combine it with the -3, it's like a 1.3%. He's not getting on. You want one other thing that would tear the country apart. You put this guy on Mount Rushmore.
To the naysayers out there, to our friends like Bruce Matzkin, who has terrible Trump derangement syndrome, in 4 years, I'm going to ask you what you're most disappointed with, and that is it the peace or the prosperity. Trump's going to bring about peace, and Trump is going to bring around great prosperity.
As Hillary Clinton said about her husband, the great president, Bill Clinton. All right.